Video, we'll be going over IRS Notice CP05b. This is a notice that the IRS might send you if they need more information to determine whether or not you're due a tax refund after you filed your tax return. So on the face of it, this looks similar to CP05a, which we discussed in a different video. There is one unique difference that I'll get to on page 2, I believe, momentarily. So let's go ahead and start at the top of this tax notice. We'll go through the information fields as we usually do, and we'll get to the point where I believe CP05b differs from CP05a. So at the very top, you'll see standard information such as the notice number, the tax year that this notice is concerning, the notice date. I'll take a pause really quick here to point out the importance of a notice date. A lot of IRS notices may have a action item or a due date, something like 30 days after the notice date, 45 days after the notice date, 60 days, so on and so forth. In this case, you can see that this is not the case. This says send information by a specific date. But you should be aware that the notice date is usually the time that the next action, there's a relationship between the notice date and then the date of the next action being due. On the face of it, it looks like these are about 45 days apart. So I imagine if this notice date were generated on March 3rd, then this would be slightly different. So then there's another thing that I'll mention really briefly. It's that if you are issued a notice and you've moved to a different residence without notifying the Internal Revenue Service, there's a chance that your notice may be sent to the old address, the incorrect address. And so if you're lucky, maybe your mail catches up to you because it's forwarded to your address. But in a lot of cases, it might not be forwarded to you. And then the other aspect is that your taxpayer ID number might be in there. So there's sensitive information in these notices, which is the reason why I always recommend updating the IRS with your most recent address as soon as practical. So if you file your tax return after you've moved, so let's say that you moved in January of a tax year and you file your tax return in March, then your new tax return updates your address, assuming that's what the address that you put on your tax return. But if you file your tax return and then you move, then it could be in an entire year that the IRS doesn't have your most recent address information. So most taxpayers aren't expecting these notices. So there's a chance that if you've moved, this notice might be chasing you around. And by the time you receive it, if you receive it at all, it might be too late to take the appropriate action. So you can call the IRS, validate your taxpayer information, and change your address over the phone, or you can file IRS Form 8822, which is the IRS's official change of address form. So if this were a real notice, you'd see the actual taxpayer's name and address here. You can see the letterhead of the office where this came from. Let's take a look at the notice itself. So on the left-hand side, it says the IRS needs more information to determine whether or not you incorrectly reported your income or incorrectly reported your tax withholding. And they're going to hold your refund until they receive your information to make a final decision. So the IRS in this notice is specifically asking you to take an action. So you need to, in this case, you would need to send any additional information that supports how you reported your tax return. So if you had an accountant or a tax preparer prepare your tax return, I would definitely encourage you to kind of work through this with that person so you've got the appropriate documentation. But if you'd filed your tax return yourself, then you should go back through your records to pull up all the documents that you can, which might include copies of pay statements or check stubs showing your tax withholdings and your income. Maybe it's a notice on company letterhead from your employer indicating your employment dates, how much you were paid, how much taxes they withheld from you. At the bottom, there's a brief notice about what contacting the IRS to update your address on file. So if you wanted to send the correspondence via mail, you would cut the bottom of this page 1 off. This is basically your voucher, and you would include your correspondence as well as your taxpayer ID number, the tax year, and the form number. You should always put that on your correspondence and then mail that together to the IRS. Here's the address that you would send it to. So couple of things. All of this still tracks with what we saw in the CP05a notice. If you didn't even file your tax return yet and you're receiving this notice, there's a chance that someone might have obtained your taxpayer information and filed a false tax return in your name. A lot of times, this is one of the biggest tax-related scams that happens every year, where identity thieves will steal the information that's required to file a tax return. They generally will file a very frivolous return with padded deductions and tax credits that make no sense. And they'll usually overstate withholdings. So all of this designed to generate a huge tax refund, which they direct into their account. And then the IRS will start sending notices when they've examined your return. Could be something like this. And you as a taxpayer are stuck with possibly paying that bill back, but at the very least dealing with a bunch of paperwork. So if you didn't even file your tax return, you should at least file IRS form 14039, which is the identity theft affidavit. So you can send that in response to this letter, and we'll put links in the show notes to the article and video we've created about that. So in the main difference that I see between this and the CP05a notice is that there's a specific reason why your refund's being delayed. In this case, the IRS is saying that your refund was delayed because whatever was reported on your Form W-2, W-2G, or your Form 1099-R appears to be different from what you reported on your tax return. So the first thing that I would recommend is go back and double check your tax returns against these documents, your Form W-2, W-2G, or 1099-Rs, to make sure that your tax withholdings and your stated income were reported properly on your Form 1040. So if all of that is in line, then you should still respond to the IRS, and there should be a phone number, a contact phone number up here. This will be something other than a bunch of X's, so you can contact the IRS to assist you in this matter. If you don't respond at all, even if it's because you moved and your notice didn't catch up with you in time, the IRS will go through with their calculations. They'll disallow all or part of your tax refund. You might actually owe a tax liability. So it's important that that you're responsive to the IRS and that you don't blow this off. So if you send the information, then they'll review it. They might need to contact the issuers, whether it's your employer, whether it's the financial institutions that reported those W-2s or 1099 forms, and they will, the IRS will hold your refund until they can make a determination. So if the information you send supports your tax return, no further action, they'll process your refund. If it doesn't, then they're going to go ahead and disallow the part of the refund or send you a notice of deficiency and a bill. You can always appeal if you don't agree with the IRS decision. But that is the basis of this IRS Notice CP05b. As I mentioned, we'll put links in the show notes to the articles and the videos we've created about these forms. If you like our articles, please subscribe to our newsletter. If you like our YouTube videos, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you have any questions or comments, or if there's another video that you'd like, if there's a tax topic that you'd like to see me create a video on, please hit me up in the comments section. Thank you very much and have a great day.